Welcome to more tales. Am I the a-hole for refusing to call my dad's young wife my stepmom? I found my biological father 6 years ago through a DNA test, but that's a long story for another day. 2 years ago, I finally got the chance to meet him for the first time. We live in completely different countries, so I flew out and stayed with him for 2 intense, unforgettable weeks. When we were together, we realized we were so alike it was almost creepy. We liked our food prepared the exact same way, picked up on each other's unspoken thoughts, and could practically read each other's minds in conversation. As we caught up, we kept discovering all these weird similarities in our histories. We even had matching tattoos, owned the exact same breed and color of dogs, and the family resemblance was uncanny. Seeing my own features mirrored in a man I had spent my entire life wondering about was an incredibly profound experience. At the time of my visit, he had recently gone through a heavy divorce. I also have a younger half-brother, who was 15 at the time, navigating the aftermath of his parents splitting up while trying to figure out high school. When my trip ended and I had to fly back home, my dad promised me that we would stay close and that he would come visit me in my country soon. Fast forward to now. My dad had been planning to come and visit me, but he kept putting it off for 2 whole years. Every time we spoke, he brought up the same excuse. He wanted to wait until my little brother was old enough to be independent before leaving him. My brother is now 17 and in his last year of high school. I understood his priority as a father, so I swallowed my disappointment and waited patiently, holding on to the hope that we would finally get our quality time together. However, ever since I left his country, my dad has been living like a chaotic college bachelor. Rather than taking time to heal after his divorce, he's jumped from one disastrous romance to another, falling head over heels for at least 5 different women in rapid succession. The sheer speed and absurdity of these relationships have been wild to watch from afar. The first major red flag was a woman who turned out to be a Russian prostitute. She ended up having what seemed to be a full-blown psychotic episode, locking herself inside a commercial beer fridge at a local liquor store. The police had to be called to escort her out of the building. To make matters stranger, she was only 30 years old at the time. I was 33 back then, meaning my dad was actively dating a woman 3 years younger than his own daughter. Then came the most recent girlfriend before his current one. He got engaged to her after knowing her for only a few weeks, rushing into ring shopping and talking about forever. But he ended things just as quickly when the red flags became impossible to ignore. He found out she spent every single afternoon drinking at local bars with her daughter's ex-husband, who also happened to be an active drug addict. Now, there is a brand new woman in his life. Once again, she is 30 years old, and I am currently 34. At first, when he brought her up on our calls, I didn't think much of it because I assumed it was just another casual long-distance romance that would fade in a month. But then things accelerated at breakneck speed. I found out my dad was planning to rent out my little brother's bedroom while my brother went to stay with his mom for a month. Someone suggested that this new woman needed a temporary place to stay, so my dad offered her the room. Within days of her moving into the house, they were having horizontal tango and acting like deeply devoted domestic partners. A few days ago, he called me on FaceTime, visibly beaming, to tell me that they are already talking about getting married and having babies together. My dad is currently in his late 50s. Hearing this blew my mind. I looked at him on the screen and bluntly said, "Dad, if you have a baby now, that would make you almost 80 by the time your kid turns 18. He didn't even take the comments seriously. He just laughed it off, turned around, and kissed her right in front of the camera. Then, he casually dropped another bomb. He started talking about bringing her along with him when he finally comes to visit me in my country. That was my absolute breaking point. I felt a wave of frustration and hurt wash over me. That visit was supposed to be about us rebuilding the years we lost. I told him, "Dad, I really need you to think about what you're doing." He had always talked about coming to visit me a few times to test the waters before eventually moving here permanently to be closer to me. It was already going to be immensely difficult for him to get residency in my country on his own due to age and bureaucracy, but now he's talking about adding a brand new young wife and a newborn baby into the mix, which makes the legal process even more complicated and practically impossible. He already delayed visiting me for years because of my younger brother, and now I feel like he's completely writing off our connection to start an entirely new life from scratch with someone my age. The pain of watching him prioritize a woman he barely knows over the bond we tried so hard to build was overwhelming. I told him straight up that if that's what he wants to do, I don't think I can keep investing emotionally in our relationship because I need to protect myself from being continuously hurt and let down again. I also couldn't hold back my feelings about his dynamic with this woman. I told him that if he actually goes through with it and marries her, I will never call her my stepmom. I said I'd probably just joke around that she's my little stepsister who happens to have a really weird, creepy relationship with our dad. He got silent and defensive, acting like I was being cruel and unfair to his newfound happiness. So, am I the asshole? Update. 3 weeks ago, my dad started dating a woman who's younger than me. He was absolutely head over heels in love with her. Well, 3 weeks later, he called me while he was out having dinner by himself and said, "I can't stand that woman." I almost kicked her out last night. Everything changed much faster than I expected. Considering how convinced he was that she was the one, I honestly thought I'd be dealing with wedding plans and conversations about babies for months. Instead, I answered the phone and immediately realized something was wrong from the way he sounded. The excitement was completely gone. He went on to tell me she's been drinking heavily and has become belligerent toward him. Sadly, it sounds like the relationship is already falling apart. Apparently, things started going downhill almost as quickly as they came together. The more time they spent together, the more obvious it became that they weren't compatible. The arguments became more frequent, and what had seemed exciting at first turned into constant frustration. He admitted that he had ignored several warning signs because he got caught up in the excitement of a new relationship. Looking back, he said everything had moved far too quickly. He didn't go into every detail, and I didn't push him to. It felt like he mostly needed someone to listen. He mentioned that dinner that evening was the first peaceful meal he'd had in days because he had gone by himself just to get some space. Hearing him say that was a huge contrast from the phone call a few weeks ago, when he couldn't stop talking about how perfect she was and how they were already discussing marriage. I tried not to say, "I told you so." There really wasn't any point. He's an adult, and he has to make his own choices. Even though I disagreed with how quickly everything was happening, he's still my dad, and I don't enjoy seeing him disappointed. I mostly listened while he vented and told him I hoped he took whatever time he needed before jumping into another serious relationship. The second I hung up, my husband and I did a little happy dance and then gave each other a big hug. Not because we're happy he's hurting, but because we've been so worried this relationship was going to stop him from coming to visit us. That was honestly our biggest concern all along. Ever since I found my biological father and we finally built a relationship, I've wanted him to spend time with our family without another major distraction getting in the way. Every time he became completely absorbed in a new romance, plans seemed to get pushed further into the future. We were afraid this relationship would be another reason for him to postpone the visit we'd been waiting years for. Now that things appear to be ending, I'm cautiously optimistic that he'll get back to the plans we originally talked about. I haven't brought up the visit yet because I don't think now is the right time. I'd rather let everything settle before asking about it again. I'm really hoping that once this is behind him, he'll finally focus on making the trip to meet his grandkids and the new little one on the way. Thank you for visiting More Tales.